Welcome to the Scale Up Valley podcast, where we bring the best founders and investors to help you scale a business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today's guest is Joerg, the founder and CEO at EcoG. Joerg, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having us here. With EcoG, we are creating the Android of the EV charging infrastructure for a connected and especially more sustainable energy system. So we are integrating EV charging into renewable energy resources, and we are excited to talk about this today.
Sounds amazing. And you are coming from Munich, and you have a great background in corporate or large enterprises before you decided to start up EcoG, your own company. Can you give us a little bit of a background about yourself and how you did end up solving this problem and starting up EcoG?
Yeah, so that's indeed a part of our DNA at EcoG, that we are the three founders of EcoG, stepped out from a corporate and created this startup in 2017, actually in Detroit as part of the Texas Mobility Program. And however, we have been in this market of electric mobility now since 2008, so now something like 15 years already. And in the beginning, in the corporate, we had the role to actually prepare this market. Yeah, so how can you create from an idea how electric mobility works, and system around with different stakeholders and so on, so this becomes an international market. So that's working a lot with the infrastructure side, with the automotive side, with standards, getting up a community and so on. So this has been very the core of the first years. And then 2016, we then realized working, having done, the first DC charging system, brought that to standardization and so on, we realized that this market is really happening and is further professionalizing, further scaling. And then the question is, do you do this kind of an operating system as part of a corporate for one manufacturer, or are you thinking that with professionalization of the market, this is relevant actually across the market for different manufacturers to have an operating system so that you can integrate electric mobility better in the energy system? And that's actually then what the founders driven forward. How can we integrate that to make electric mobility actually a renewable and a sustainable mobility in the future?
Got it. And today, what is the focus of EcoG? So if you would need to quickly explain a bit more the problem and the solution for the ones who are less educated about electric mobility and the EV industry, electrical vehicles industry, again, trying to take the jargon out of the conversation, how would you present EcoG in terms of problem solution?
Yeah, I think we have two challenges right now in the market. The first one is charging an electric vehicle is not like fueling 2.0. Yeah, so charging an electric vehicle is more like you can imagine with your notebook. Yeah, so wherever you have a power source, you just connect it and top up your charge in the vehicle. Yeah, as you do with your notebook. Wherever you have a socket, you just plug in, everything is fine. And that's actually cool. So you are no longer need to drive somewhere to charge. It's actually, because electricity is basically everywhere, you just plug in. Now the challenge is that this technology still is quite has a certain complexity, and on the vehicle side we now see, hey, this market is really booming, right? So we go from one record on sales of electric vehicle to the next one, but we also see that the infrastructure is not catching up, and actually it's, if you look back, it's worse. So compared to 3 years ago, we have per vehicle less charging infrastructure than we had 3 years ago, because the market in electric mobility is so much booming and the infrastructure part is not scaling. Yeah. And so this is a challenge number one. We need to scale this infrastructure portion. Otherwise, we get into a deadlock on the vehicle side. So what EcoG is doing is just makes simple how chargers are built. Yeah, so we are providing the operating system, we are providing reference designs, we are providing starter kits. So whoever has capacity in building electrical equipment, we enable to do and build EV chargers. Yeah, so this is today's challenge where we are strong. We have now 15% market share in Europe within 3 years. So it shows that this this enablement works. Yeah, we are gaining right now per year to year 5% market share. Yeah, so this becomes quite a promising setup. We have started now 1.5 years ago in India. So if you drive along the highways in India, it's already quite a good likelihood that you charge with EcoG actually. And we are now about to start in the North American market, getting back to our roots to say. Yeah.
Right. So in terms of stage of growth, Joerg, for the ones who are listening to relate better to where you are today. So you started the company in 2017. In terms of head count, any other metrics that you can disclose in the markets? You were saying that you are in India, Europe, and expanding again to the US now. What can you share in terms of the stage of growth of the company?
Yeah, so we started, as you correctly said, 2017. We worked basically 2 years on the initial product together with partners and so on. And in 2019 we started in the autumn into the market. Yeah, and so in this now 3 years we basically got the 15% market share in Europe. But what is actually more amazing, I have to say,
15%. That's
15%. Yeah, so you can say more than every 10th DC charger now sold last year into the market is running the EcoG OS already. Yeah, so it shows you that this scale you bring to the market works out. And this is not only our success, that's clear, it's actually the success of those who are in this ecosystem. Yeah, think of also Windows on your PC. Yeah, so the smart thing about an operating system is that there are so many other companies finding value in such a approach that we are not alone. We are now more than 50 companies in this ecosystem. Yeah. So if you compare to your PC, it's like, those building the hard drive, those building, the screens and so on. And it's with the chargers, it's the same. Yeah. So we are working with those doing converters for the AC-DC conversion, those doing the displays, those doing the microcontrollers, those doing the isolation monitors. Yeah, and it's very comparable there to what we see in other domains, how an ecosystem evolves together with an operating system. And this is really, I think, the success part. I think in 3 years to have an ecosystem of 50 companies collaborating, this is enormous.
That's incredible and great analogy. So we can understand much better what you guys are doing now. And in terms of the geographical expansion, Joerg, we're talking about, again, the US, Europe, and India. Can you share a bit more about the story and the lessons learned for other companies that are going through their international expansion plans, what they can learn from your journey as well?
Yeah, so maybe I start a little bit because we are now kind of already about 15 years in this domain. Yeah, so here it's not that you say you start a certain topic where you further develop an existing market, or you find an element in an existing market where you innovate, but you are actually creating together with others this new market in total. Yeah, and so it was in the beginning, as I said, quite important to get the understanding how actually you do this interface from infrastructure side to the vehicle. And this has been industries never talking to each other before, right? So you had this enormous global market. I think one of the most global industries you can think of, which is the automotive industry, coming to or needing to be connected to an industry which is the most regional one you can imagine, which is actually electric power distribution. Yeah, so I can tell you just in Germany, we have more than 1,000 grid operators for electric distribution with their own grid codes, just in Germany. Now you can
Wow.
think on Europe, you think of the electric system in India, in US, and so on. So this is super, super regional market compared to this global one. Yeah. And now the
Yeah.
idea is how you glue that together. This is a lot about standards. So where I say we need internationally now to think how to change things. When it comes to renewable, this is a global challenge. So
Mhm.
we can't continue to work, hey, here is this grid operator, there's this grid operator. We need to come to standards and say that's a rough path to go, how we connect
Right.
renewable energy resources with the storage in vehicles to make this integrated system. Yeah. And there are two ways then to do that. On one hand side, between the vehicle and the infrastructure, how you agree on a standard. So that's now
Mhm.
established in the Western world, I have to say. So China is there quite separate. Um, and so we then, with these standards getting established, we also went into the market, because the second part is then actually the software game, how you integrate then this charging into the infrastructure. And this is something where we understood how, an Android system was doing it. So Android is no
Mhm.
longer about phone calls, but a lot about business process integration. And this process
Got it.
integration we also need for this energy system. And therefore we have now two components. How we develop now over the continents. First is the enabler that certain standards are established, and then making with the software, the scaling easy, and also the functionality to integrate easy. And so we started actually then in Europe, because this was now the first market adopting the standards and really pushing them forward with the automotive industry.
Mhm.
In US, we had Tesla doing a little bit their own stuff, and now you probably read it just this week that they are also tuning into the standards. Yeah, so opening up their charging infrastructure to the
Got it.
standard world, which is a good sign. That's also reason why we now go to North America, because this becomes a market which completely now kicks in. Yeah, and in between there
Right.
was actually India. So 1.5 years ago, India decided also to go with the Western world standards. Yeah, so and when they discussed it, we also stepped into that market.
Right.
And so you always for others, you always have to see how the market develops. Yeah, what are the opportunities? Do you have the right timing? And that was also what we heard now from the investors. Hey, you are on spot with your timings. You have the product ready. When the market starts, you can scale in,
Right.
you can step in. Yeah.
Because in terms of what is your ideal customer profile, Joerg?
Right now, it's those enabling to scale in production. Yeah, so where we say if you have capabilities to produce electrical equipment,
Got it.
then we enable them to manufacture that in a very scalable way with all the
Right.
ecosystem partners serving this notion of production market. Yeah, and maybe to give this parallel, so I've been in my personal life before also active in 2000 until 2006 in the mobile communication world, so in the mobile phone world. Yeah,
Yeah.
where this transition happened from mobile phone to smartphones. And I think in the first phase, it's really like that now in the charger market. So the market leaders today are like the market leaders in the mobile phone world at that time, where you need to know everything about a
Mhm.
mobile phone to build a mobile phone. Yeah, and
Right.
now the smartphone market is by 100 times bigger than the mobile phone market. And actually, it's a lot more complex. But the change now is that there are so much professional components in the market. So where Qualcomm serves, you with blueprints like the MediaTek does and so on. And I think this is the key to develop a market. So this is exactly now the switch over. We have also in the charger market. So far, we have companies like an ABB knowing from the very top to the very bottom vertically everything about these DC chargers. But we
Mhm.
see more and more companies stepping in who know actually how to professionally produce them, and then taking professional components from the market and actually scale this production. And it's
Right.
basically the same like the transition from mobile phones to smartphones. Things become now more smarter, and companies focusing more on how to make that a scalable, a perfect produced product.
Yeah, and currently those players are a little bit larger because they need to have all those skills in the same player, and the potential is now to go more from large enterprise companies to mid market, or those are more mid market players. Clearly, this is a B2B motion, right?
Yeah, well, we see both trends basically. Yeah, so if you look who is now producing smartphones, it's companies like Foxconn and so on. So they don't know all the details of the phone, but they know how to professionalize the production. And we see similar things now in the charger market. So it's no longer, you know, the company knowing the whole detail, so they can engineer everything by themselves, but they take in, for instance, someone like EcoG, enabling them how to engineer, how to build their prototypes.
Operating system.
And that scales it. So you get those in who have enormous production capacities, and that scales the market. That's one aspect. And the other is you also get those in who know the target domain, who know how to integrate chargers. Not necessarily being super expert in the charger technology itself, but being super expert in, for instance, fleet management, in retail integration. And they now are also enabled to do their adapted product to this portion of their expertise. And so you see this integration and the scale is now happening, and that's the two trends we see in the market.
And you have both companies that are leveraging this opportunity and starting up, and you have also older players that see here a new business unit, a new products, a new opportunity to grow their businesses, right?
Yeah, and there, I think what is really the game changing of electric mobility. Don't think about this fueling 2.0, but think what electric mobility can bring to your business. And that's crucial. Whether you are a manufacturer, you did that in the past, and maybe even not connected to fueling at all, but you do, for instance, fleet management. And now, due to the availability of electricity in your site, in your depot, in your destination of this fleet, you can now start and think, hey, how can I differentiate my business? Becoming more renewable, do more, this energy management part, even do your own, way how you do your charging infrastructure becomes at your tip of a finger. And so you have a lot now new opportunities with electric mobility you likely not had with traditional combustion mobility.
Got it. So there are different ICP segments to serve, and this can be also a differentiation for more traditional players that want to serve their customers and use this solution to differentiate themselves and to scale up the way they serve the customers. So I can see, namely, the fleet management companies. Cool. So let's move more to the founding team. So you said that you were 3 co-founders. How do you split responsibilities? What is the background of each of you, etc., etc.?
Yeah, so actually we did not need to split the compatibilities because we were so diverse already, so that it was pretty clear who is doing what of the 3 founders. So so it was on one side Johannes, on our side, our CTO. He did it in a corporate before, what we call the IoT operating system. So he's really the mastermind. Whatever gets integrated, connected with our let's say operating system toolbox we are providing for our customers. So he is the person to completely coordinate that. He is networked in the scene, did that for 10 years, had also genes in the startup world before coming to the corporate. So that's a very, very strong point. And it's clear that he started as a CTO, overlooking and organizing this portion of the company. Then we have had Manuel on board, already coming from a venture capital side, from the startup side, knowing the mechanics on both sides, being a startup, but also with respect to the investor relationships, and also what is crucial to keep the scope on. And also, especially in the beginning of the startup, you have a lot of stuff to organize, and you have to do that out of the box, very pragmatic. So Manuel was a person correct in place here to take that over and organizing it from the scratch, the Techstars session we had in 2017, and then continued on. Yeah, and myself, I coordinated quite in the past activities, whether it was in the mobile communication or in the electric mobility, build up ecosystems around, and shaped the market twice with quite diverse industries. So I took care about the business development, the electric mobility arena, and also as a CEO, of course, of the financial setup of the company.
Right. And in terms of the size of the team today, Joerg, so you started the three of you, and today.
Yeah, the cool thing I have to say, and I'm always fascinated of this, is, you know, we started in Detroit three persons. Then of course, as a startup, a lot hands-on. We are now 35 persons in the team. But what is actually the cool one, we are more than 16 nationalities in the team. So
Amazing.
It shows by starting this highly visible as a startup on an international scale, we are kind of, you know, working against the trends. We are annoyed to have more this kind of my region first mentality, but more think of, hey, we have here a global challenge. Why should not we be a super international team to address this?
This is amazing. And do you guys have more an office policy or a remote first policy, hybrid? How are you able to have all that diversity
That's
in
a
the
good
team?
one. Yeah. So that's always in the team, a lot of discussions we have. And for us, it's you know, personally, we are all kind of working nomads. So we are somewhere in the world, and where we are working. So no issue about that. On the other hand side, and that's also part of the DNA of our startup, is we are 98% software. So where you can do that around the globe, actually. But our software is very tight related to hardware, to power flow, to physical world, what goes on. And so what we saw, you know, we all have the experience of COVID behind us, and we know that in principle stuff also works, or we can work around completely working remote. But we also see that it's different also to come together, to discuss, to put your hands on really the equipment you are controlling. Yeah, so there's an inspiration in that, and also the notion of the exchange. And so we are very aware of these both parts. So I would say we do a hybrid work style. So where it helps, we are remote, but we value very much the exchange in person, to be on site, you know, to have the hands on, to understand, to feel, to experience what we do in the physical world. And so I think this is something we also want to support and encourage a lot in the team. Yeah, and still it's a process to find the right balance. But we more and more think, after the COVID experience, that being on site and having this come together, this exchange over a coffee, is highly valuable.
So which means that you are in the same region, and then you have a more flexible working policy.
We have both. Yeah, we have colleagues, of course, being that many nationalities, being remote, like in USA, like in Tunisia, and so on. But we try to also find our fixed days to come together, and we encourage for those who be local to really make use of the office and you know, exchange the views, do the best to get those who are remote in as natural as possible.
Yeah. Something that you mentioned more related with the product again, before introducing the topic of fundraising that the listeners always love to hear about, is that your product is software first, so it's the operating system, but you need to understand the hardware in order to keep improving that operating system, right? Mm-hmm. Do you also have hardware, or is it just software, or it's a combination of both?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so probably it's if I understand your point correctly, there are two aspects in, right? So first, a little bit to understand what we are doing there again, and then how is that seen also from investor side? Yeah.
Yes, that was the direction I was going, but
mm.
just understanding if you have both software and hardware on your product, or if it is just software. That would
Yeah.
be
So
good.
if you look in our team, in our 35 people, we are 95%, 98% software. Yeah. So
Got
software
it.
experts and so on. Yeah. But we have a lot of expertise also on the hardware side, so where our software is running on. Yeah. And even there are some IPs of the company on the hardware side. So
Got it.
whatever also runs through our labs, runs also to the production line. There's quite some hardware related, because our software is often coming to the production line installed in a hardware of our partners, which is then routing through. Yeah, it's maybe in that regard even a little bit similar than to your Windows and Android analogy. Yeah, so where you don't download Android as such, but you get it with your mobile phone. Yeah, and so this is also similar in our business. So there's a lot, this reference design, hardware understanding in the company, but we are not selling hardware or something like that. Yeah, exactly. So it's always in combination with the software. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. And now you have been kind of going through a journey, like in any startup. You just raised in December of last year a 6 million Series A round. How has been the journey of fundraising since I would say the first angel checks, the Techstars program, then the seed check, and now the A round? What has been some of your lessons learned through the fundraising process since 2017, right?
Yeah. So what we raised first money in 2020 actually, because we found a way how to finance a company on projects before doing our product. So which was really cool. Well done. And so we have now two rounds, the seed round and the Series A. And already in seed round, we had then venture capital in. So not that many, actually no angels as such. And I think the learning is connected to what we discussed before. So due to the let's say due to the founders, due to the company, we had a lot of interest from the VC scene. Yeah, so everyone was a cool market of electric mobility. You're doing great, and so on. Great perspective. So everyone was basically talking with us, but we realized not everyone is understanding what it means to do this notion of software. Yeah, think of how many startups are actually doing operating systems. Would you have some in mind? Maybe it's really rare, I would say. Yeah, and so what we realized is there's an enormous interest from the investors, but those who really get what we do is limited, and therefore we in the seed round we readjusted after half a year and said, okay, we have a lot of discussions, but actually we don't feel that a lot of these VCs understand what we are doing. Right. Yeah, so what we then focused on is not go with every request we get from the investor side, but actually think, is that investor experience what it means to do something in the infrastructure on the energy systems world? Yeah, because then they are likely to understand what does it mean to innovate there something. There's a good point in there, which is, hey, what you do is super sustainable. Yeah, so when you are in deals, this goes quite a long time. It's, our average customer value is something like 3 to 8 million euro. And we know how this business runs now for the next 5 years, how this is growing and so on. So it's super predictable. You get your share in, you know how these things work. However, if someone thinks, hey, this is now the cool fast hockey stick, and you just sell a software license, you invest on a marketing campaign and you see the change in 1 month, it's not like that. And so most people, I think, thinking they know software, think about the last one and not about the first one. Yeah, and therefore it was so important not just start these discussions with the investors, but in an early stage of this discussion to verify, is the investor really understanding what you're doing? Has the investor the model how to evaluate such a business? Yeah, and this is now the first topics of the first 2 meetings we do with investors, and that's independent if it's the seed round or was now the Series A round. Yeah. And for us, the Series A was now really cool because we managed last year to get profitable actually as a startup. And so we could focus on the Series A really on the growth potential. I'd say, can we, take the money in this booming market to really invest in scale and not invest in, the today's business as such. Yeah.
That is quite amazing, and that's what is advised to go for the next round with the potential of becoming in a break-even situation or cash flow positive, and not needing to raise the round. You are just raising the round to be able to accelerate the growth and not to sustain the costs of the company or to survive, in other words, right? So
yeah, and it was super lucky. I mean, it was not totally planned like that. So we just were lucky that this turns out to be that way last year.
Well,
but of course, it was really a great thing, because the situation in the investment market, of course, end of last year was quite complicated. Yeah, so we started in summer, and within 3 months we basically knew that this Series A works out. So that was really a cool one. Yeah.
And I can understand there is a lot of buzz and a lot of opportunities and a lot of awareness from the investor side about this category, because that's a new category, and usually venture capitalists enjoy new categories because that's opportunity to back a winner, right? But at the same time, there are very few people who understand the new opportunity, the new market, the new category, which becomes a challenge, right? So because we have a lot of people that want to talk to you, but it will take a long time to educate them so they are confident to back you up, right? So
yeah, it's even worse. Yeah, so you can't really educate a VC, I would say. Yeah, so the VC always has a certain model behind the VC knows, and maybe in US it's a little bit different, but here in Europe, I think especially VCs are very pattern driven. Yeah, so I mean they are minimizing their risk, and they want to follow with their fund a certain pattern they are trusting in, and there are tons of opportunities also out there, and they need to filter for the right ones. And the really bad things, and maybe that's also a hint for other startups, the bad thing or the worst thing in investors discussion is if you start into the discussion and you are not early finding out, it will not lead to anywhere. Yeah, because then you are spending, meeting after meeting, and after maybe 10 meetings, you identify, hey, this will not end up, and both sides then waste the time, and not really come to the conclusion, hey, we get a certain understanding of the right evaluation methodology. Yeah, and that's basically what we experienced in this when we first started Seed, and we readjusted after half a year. Yeah.
So do you feel that strategic investors might be a better fit for this category than the typical financial investors that want to see if you will build a 100 million business in 7 years, and if you will be able to double the revenues of the company every single year?
Yeah, let's put it maybe that way. So every whether it's a strategic one or a financial, there are always sides which fit to your business and which not, which are poor sides and sides which are challenging. Yeah. So with strategic investors, of course, they are often a little bit more longer term thinking. Yeah. So thinking, hey, is that fitting to our strategy, what we want to move forward, how it fits over. So this is a positive side, but there are also challenges in that one. So of course, what are the implicit interests there? Could that also diverge over time? Yeah, or often the strategic investors also coming from a certain corporate background, or is actually the strategy of that corporate changing? And that's quite often the case. So you can say basically every 4-5 years, this might be the case in average. And so there's also a certain risk in, hey, is that strategy over time really still fitting or not? Yeah, so that's a challenge, but also the positive side on the strategy one. On the financial one, I think what is interesting there is of course their drive to scale and their drive to evaluation potential you are creating. And it's good to have then someone in who actually also kind of energizes and drives and provides their expertise in this aspect. Of course, for us, challenging for the financial is always that they like, of course, a fast way to control things, a fast way to create the hockey stick, and then you need to sit down and say, okay, what is the potential we are putting with this infrastructure in place to also make that happen and be very clear on that, so that the parameters are correctly interpreted, let's say. Yeah, so what is your growth and what you are enabling with this growth? Yeah, so of course, with the footprint we are creating with our operating system, there's also, the integration opportunities and with this footprint. Yeah, so you need to work then jointly with those. And so for us, it's really cool to have both in. Yeah, so to balance that and to optimize also in the combination. If you think of a board meeting, both aspects. On one hand, being always challenged on the scale, but also someone saying, "Hey, keep the strategic corridor. Don't get crazy. Yeah, you're really on a super solid path. What you are doing. Yeah."
So you'd say it's much more a lesson on the side of be careful with the investors that you are speaking with and go through kind of a qualification stage before spending too much time with those investors. So kind of what we do with the customer, right? So first qualify if there is potential for that company or stakeholder to become a client before investing too much time. The same with the investor or with any partner, any stakeholder of the company.
And also think about combination. Yeah, so you don't need to go pure with one category. And maybe looking back in an early stage, I would also think of I mean, we started now with basically 2 VCs, and looking back, I would honor more to even there already in seed had a combination in maybe a VC and a angel or family office. Yeah, so could also have been a combination looking back.
Got it. It's also ensuring that you have all the skills you need to scale the company and to advise you on your board, right? So again, not only the capital that you also need to ensure that you have it in order to be able to keep running the company, but also the smart capital, as we always discuss on these episodes, right?
Yeah, and that's really really depends on the person then also but the person is often driven with the mindset of the affiliation then.
Yeah, and the passion about the industry, the opportunity, and the curiosity to learn more, etc. We can feel that some of us are.
That's a cool one with electric mobility. I think there somehow everyone in. So that's
everyone is curious to learn more about. That's an odd topic. Something quite cool again about electric mobility. That's the purpose, right? So as we have been discussing here on the show, and then I need to ask a lot of questions myself, it's not quite easy to quickly get everything that you were talking about, and you did a great job kind of creating analogies for me to understand it, and I assume for some of our listeners also to understand. Some of them might be much more educated than myself and quickly got it. But something interesting is that you are able also to attract people who are purpose-driven to be part of this opportunity. What is the impact of what you do, Joerg? I know that you have a very good way of articulating your narrative and the way your purpose is important to humanity.
Yeah, maybe there first a personal comment on that one. Yeah, so I just mentioned I was before in this mobile communication industry, and well, I'm now also in the second half of my life, and at a certain point in time, you wonder, what's the purpose, also what you're doing there. And I have to say I was really appreciating working together with a colleague, even in this communication time, who privately already worked in this renewable activity. So at home, having PV in, being engaged with the local community, how can we change the energy system, the distribution system, and doing that privately. Yeah. So we sit down in the evenings and said, okay, what is this actually now going to happen? And that's back 2006. So at a time where no one was really talking about smart grids or something. Yeah. And so this opened up my eye and said, well, actually, we have to care about what is the purpose, what can we contribute to this planet to leave it actually as a better place than we approached it. Yeah. And so for me then, and maybe that's also for the colleague at the end of the day, was the big aha, you can do that on a private level. Yeah, where you say, okay, in your free time, you care about this and you push this forward. But it's a total different level if you do that as a professional.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so in 2006, 7, I had then the honor in the corporate to think about, hey, can we bring forward this distribution grid, more integrating renewables together with the colleagues, and then you are not spending 10 or 20% of your time on this, but you're starting to spend suddenly 60, 70% of your time on what matters, and this I think is continuing since then. And you're right, sometimes it's a bit hard, maybe from an outstanding person or outside person to understand it. But think now what we do with the electric mobility. Yeah, so electric mobility will consume, if you just look at the power, as much energy as the complete electrical system in Germany in 15 years. And now everyone is investing, buying an EV in battery storage. And this is not then considered to be part of a problem. Hey, we have, to duplicate our electrical system to feed now these batteries and mobility. No, actually, by smartly integrating, we enable renewables, which are also super volatile. So sometimes you have renewable power in the grid, sometimes not. And now with the storage, you can actually compensate that. So how cool is it that now everyone massively is investing by buying cars in batteries to make this happen? And now the thing is, with software, how can we smartly integrate, this battery storage with renewables being available in the grid? Yeah, and now making this more sustainable is no longer on hardware buying something, but it's on software to make this smart integrated. And then you suddenly see the scale. So we are not discussing here about your PV on the roof of 5 kilowatt hours and so on, but by integrating, we are immediately talking about terawatts, we are talking of petawatts. So that's the dimension we are working on. And this is a total different dimension now in the professional life. We can move forward to integrate renewables and to make mobility more sustainable. Then in a local domain, we are acting as a private person. And I think this ignites with a lot of the other colleagues, even being active in the scene, being active in electric mobility, thinking of what really matters. What do they want to push forward in their life to say, hey, make this still and even a better place, a better global world in the next 10, 20 years.
Absolutely. Super inspiring. Thanks for sharing, Joerg. And let's go to the last segment of the show where we kind of do a quick ping pong of questions and answers. If you would have the opportunity to have a coffee with yourself in 2017 when you started EcoG, what advice would you offer to your younger self?
Maybe not when I start EcoG, but maybe as a young professional, to earlier think about, to combine maybe the ambition one hand also is with a meaningfulness. And I'm really fascinating to see that we have more and more a young generation already taken care of, where I have to say myself, when I, finished my university time and so on, I was more, like driven like maybe a little bit a nerd person and having, some fun aspects in technology. And this came later in my life, but I see a lot now of the younger generation already having that really on the radar and, living this. And so looking back, I would love to have done that already earlier.
Love it. And what are you the most proud of on your journey so far?
Mm. Mm. I think right now I'm more amazed than proud. So I'm amazed of the people joining this journey, being around in this network and saying, hey, this is something cool, cool to join, and I'm really have deep respect of these professionals, having a super expertise, whether that's in business building, whether that's in partner management and so on, having a super standing there and then saying, hey, I take the challenge, I take all this risk going to this startup and driving this forward because I believe in this topic. Yeah, and I'm really amazed by these characters and these persons who joined and are now still joining the team. So and we discussed also the different nationalities, how this is really on a international global scale. That's really amazing. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Worst advice ever received, Joerg?
Worst advice. To be honest, my first reaction would be I don't remember. But I think, there's something behind that. And it's similar to what we discussed with these investors coming to us. And you could imagine there are maybe some bad advices in that one. But I think it's more important to think there's actually not a bad advice by intention. All advices are good, and I think it's more on the role of the person who is receiving advice to first not think to classify the advice. That would be, I think, wrong. It's more to think, where is the context of that person providing you the advice? And advices are normally, I would say, in a super inspiring, good faith and so on. And then it's more to think of what is the core element of this advice. So to understand the context where this advice is coming from, and then thinking of how can that context be translated to your context. Yeah. And what is therefore this notion of the truth core in there, what you then take over for yourself. So it's not a black-white thing to say, hey, it's a bad or good advice. Advices are always good. So it shows the ambitions of the people, putting the advice forward. It's more, how do you transform or what to find the notion which is helpful for you in the advice, and then to take that over. Yeah.
Great reflection. And finally, the resources, your favorite book. It can be business or non-business. This is much more about getting to know you.
Personally, I have to say, it happened to me that someone hinted me to Our Iceberg is Melting from John Kotter. And this guided me a lot because we are always thinking about, how to improve, how to move forward. But I think most can be mapped actually to how to change things. And how to change things, you do not do that by yourself. Yeah, you do that always in the context together with others. And to understand a little bit, how this works, this together with others, I think this has been an excellent book.
Favorite movie or series?
Yeah, I have to say maybe I do it because it's the discussion is today. I do that in a special way today. So last night we had from Tesla the master plan number 3, and I think the investors obviously didn't like it that much. I liked it very much because not from the investors' perspective, but to understand, what matters if you scale. Do you want to scale a change? And you felt with everyone who was there on the stage, being something like 10 years in average, I think, with Tesla. What has been their learnings? What has been their pain points? What their assumptions were to change things? And it was an excellent session yesterday.
Love it. And finally, your favorite podcasts, excluding this one.
Oh, I have there to say I'm still exploring that space. So
Sounds good.
I would say I'm always keen on the topics and the persons to understand that, and I'm really looking for those who reflect there. And I think podcasts are a cool way. It's not like, like presentations, company presentations, a lot of interactions, a lot of surprises in the discussions. And so from that perspective, I like the notion very much, but maybe you have some recommendations.
I have, definitely. Jörg, thanks so much for making the time. It has been a pleasure to have you on the show, and congrats for what you have been doing, and all the best for the next chapters. You are always invited to come back.
Hey, thanks a lot, Mike, for the discussion, and maybe also to whoever listens to that. So if you are in, whether as a company to change this notion of the sustainable electric system as well as mobility, or you think as an individual to step in and drive this change in your professional life, reach out, and happy to connect.
Sounds awesome. And to our community, thanks for being on that side. We keep bringing you the best of the best to make your life a little bit easier as you scale up your company. See you soon and keep scaling.